I talked about on the phone. What's missing on the phone? How we look. We don't have anything to see. So all we have is the tone and the words. What's missing on email? Oh my goodness. How we look and how we sound. So we just have the words. So that's one of the reasons that these aspects become so crucial. So think about it. If our message is incongruent, if it's incongruent, people will depend face-to-face on what they see. So be aware of your facial expressions and be aware of how you sound. All right, let's move to the first aspect that we're going to focus on today, the policies. Have you ever noticed when people say that word, it's like they sit up taller and they take a big breath and the word gets really big and they say, it's not our policy to do that. Just an aside, I told Uber that I was deleting their app after the 5th reason, but mainly because they said to me in an email exchange about a $5 charge that they said I'd canceled. They said it is not our policy to issue refunds. Guess who does issue refunds? Lyft. And they did it in the car before I even was delivered by the Lyft driver, because I emailed and said, you know what? I got charged for a cancellation that I didn't make, and the driver did not stand up and say he or she was there. So just an example, policies, got to be real careful with them. Here's a quote from one of my favorite people. If you want to subscribe to, I couldn't think of the word for a minute, subscribe to one blog that comes every day, I would recommend Seth Godin. And he says, not changing your strategy merely because you're used to the one you have now is a lousy strategy. Oftentimes in any situation, things are just being done the way the first person that ever did it thought up to do it. So one of the things to focus on today in our time together is what needs to be changed, what needs to be eliminated, what needs to be rephrased. So those are the 3 aspects of the policies we're going to look at. Do you have one that's outdated or unnecessary? May well. Do you have one that needs to be rephrased? And I'll give you some examples of this. We are, as I said, especially in email, destroying relationships. And do you have one that could be initiated? So those are the 3 aspects of policies that we'll take a look at. All right, how about which ones need to be eliminated? And I have delivered this program, probably at 5 different Rec Park Association or Society conferences. And these are some of the ideas that people came up with. 1, they eliminated the policy closed shoes required. Why? What are people wearing, especially the young people now, all the time? You got it, flip-flops. So they eliminated that policy. Another facility eliminated the water only in the facility, because what are people drinking? Well, Gatorade is one of them, but certainly some sort of sport drink. Another group really took a look at their late fees. And what they determined is that they were just viewed as punitive and didn't make them a lot of money, were really a negative thing to have happen. And then another group looked at the phrasing of rate policies. And they said, whoa, do those need reviewing? These are not phrased well. So that may be the aspect that you'll want to focus on when I shut up and have you make some notes. Do you have one that could be eliminated? And I've just given you 4 examples. Then how about the way it's phrased? Now don't panic. I'm going to run a bunch of words down here, and at the bottom you're going to have the link to where you can get them, plus you're going to have this slide, so not to worry. These are what we call red flag phrases. You wave them in front of your customers, and it's just like waving a red flag in front of a bull, and they're just going to charge. So we got to be careful. So on the left, you'll see the red flag phrase, and on the right, a version of how you could change it. One is you should have. You know, there's that finger pointing. You should have. How about instead, I can understand why you did that. I can understand why you didn't understand how to register. I can understand. That's empathy. How about you'll have to? How often do we say that? You'll have to sign in. How about instead what our moms taught us? Well, my mom taught us, may I ask you to? Yeah, we've got to get back to this politeness. Why didn't you? Yeah. How about I can see why you weren't able to do that? Yeah, again, a little empathy. The one that comes up, I have to. How often do we hear people say that? Well, I have to go get that, or I have to do this. How about instead, I will, or let me? Let me is kind of my fallback phrase that I will use a lot. Then the phrase, I can't. Oh boy. Well, are you always happy to? No, but we need to figure out something to say instead of I can't. That's not my responsibility. Similar. If you work in a facility, if you're a part person in any capacity, that is not a phrase to use. How about I'll find out who, and then I'll get back to you with that person's name. Yeah. I'll transfer you. I always say on the phone, never use the word transfer. Think about it. If you get transferred or somebody says, I'll transfer you, what are you immediately sure is going to happen? You're going to get disconnected, aren't you? Yeah. Or you just got dumped. Yeah. So how about what you'd really like to have happen? Let me connect you with. And just a word about this, if you're on the phone, if they're going to go to voicemail, be sure to let them know that. Even in this day and age, there's some people who get really ticked if they go from a live person to voicemail and are not alerted ahead of time. So another way to say that is, John is our expert in aquatics. May I connect you with him and have him share that information with you? Ooh, people love to talk to the expert. So you probably have a lot of experts that you could use. And then there's one word that we have got to lose. This could be one of those quarter jars at work. Every time somebody says, but, they got to throw in a quarter. I'd be happy to do that, but, yeah, you know how it sounds. We need to change that to another three-letter word, and. Try this at home first. You will be amazed at the results that you get. And then this is going to make me sound even older than my face looks, but the phrase, no problem. Everybody tells me it's generational. Baloney. No problem is, well, it's a double negative for starters, and it assumes that what someone asked was a problem. Not to them. How about you're welcome? Or I'm glad I could help. Or I'm happy to. Or my pleasure. Now be careful with that one. I was in a hotel recently. Well, I'm in hotels all the time. And somebody delivered my room service dinner, I think. And before he left the room, he had said my pleasure 5 times. And I thought, wow, this guy just went to a training. So if you can't say it sincerely, don't say it. Pick one that you can say sincerely. And here's my link. You can go to janmclaughlin.blogspot.com, and I have all kinds of posts that you might find interesting in my blog. And just enter up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a place where you can enter, just enter red flag phrases, and they will all come up. So really think about, how am I phrasing something? Here's a classic one. You can cite a higher authority rather than sounding demanding. Here are some park examples. City regulations ask that we gather some information about the head of household, rather than saying, I need the name of the head of household. Feel the difference? So it's not the person or you demanding something. It's city regulations ask that we gather. Now be careful. Don't make it sound like you're city regulations ask that we gather. Just keep it real neutral, which could be hard, especially if you're suffering from sarcasm. A second one, and this really hits home, for the safety of your child, we ask for contact information of the primary guardian and an emergency contact person in case we can't reach the primary guardian. Okay, much better than, we need a primary guardian and we need your emergency contact person. Feel the difference? So as I say, if we cite a higher authority, then it's not the individual demanding. And people are much more likely to comply. So the second aspect of policy that you can decide if you're going to focus on is one that needs to be rephrased. And then the third one that could be initiated, a new one that you could do. And I love this quote from Roger Staubach. If you're a football fan, well, or you watch the Dallas Cowboys, you know that he was their very successful quarterback. Look what he said. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile. I think that says it all. So if we are going the extra mile, there's not a traffic jam. Let me give you some neutral examples. These aren't park and rec examples, they're neutral ones, but they're, I think, pretty amazing. Harley Davidson has one of the best ones I've seen. About this time of year, probably a little sooner, they contact their Harley owners and say, boy, your bike's probably been sitting under a tarp for most of the winter, and we want you to be sure to be able to enjoy your first spring ride. So we suggest you check and make sure your battery isn't dead. Yeah, people love it. But think from another angle. What do you think Harley sells more of by doing this? You got it, battery chargers. So it's really kind of a two-way street, a double thing. And then think about Heinz ketchup. What did they do? You can see it right there. Oops. Didn't used to have that. They turned their bottle upside down. So now you don't have to stick the knife in the bottle to try to get the ketchup out. Now, unfortunately, the minute you open the bottle, it goes on your plate. So you got to be careful. You might get more ketchup than you want. So let's stop and think about this. Which policies may be outdated or unnecessary? I want you to pick one of the three, focus on that, and enter your ideas in chat. Which policies may be outdated or unnecessary? Which policies may need to be rephrased? And this could be face-to-face, on the telephone, through email, or on your website. And are there new policies you may initiate? So I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes and let you make notes. If you have the handouts, you can make them on the second page. If you don't, just write them down on anything and share them in chat. We're going to get our compass aligned with our customers. All right, I'll be quiet.
Everyone make sure when you're entering in chat, there's a drop-down menu and select everyone so we can all see it. Or if you have one that you want to send privately to Jan, you can send that to her as well. But I was chatting with a few people, and then it tends to default to the last person you talked to, so then they sent me their ideas. No worries. And Jan, are you able to see the chat?
No, and I'm trying to find it. That's what I'm busy doing now.
Right.
I may have to stop my share for a moment to do that.
I believe it should be in the top.
It's not coming up.
Menu there. Oh.
Ah, there, see, it finally did. All right. I click on it, but I don't get it. So you're in charge, Chase.
All right. All right, Jane, were you able to get chat?
No, and I was losing other things, so I'm not going to. What I would suggest is if people are willing to unmute themselves one at a time, and we'll only do a few, I would like to know who came up with some policies that are outdated or unnecessary. Hold up your hand if you did, unmute yourself and tell us one. Or do you have any in chat, Chase?
A lot of folks were listing the policies in general without necessarily mentioning which of the three.
That's my fault. I should have asked them to mention which of the three.
That's all right. Well, and I see a lot of common themes. So we have, I believe, outdated or unnecessary things that are talking about dress codes or other registration elements that include different rules based on sex assigned at birth, as well as gender options on forms being binary. I believe those are being referred to as outdated. Policies that have been written in the 70s.
Yeah.
Things that new policy, I believe, would be drone use in public parks. That's one that we saw there. That needs to be addressed for sure. Wording that is hard to understand for the public or even employees. That's something that I imagine would need to be rephrased.
Yep.
But yes, policies that are punitive in nature is
Yes.
one that could be either. And then, yeah, a lot of stuff about gender pronouns and general understanding and acceptance on that front when it comes to forms and policies in general. Dress codes that are outdated for tattoos and colored hair. Policies that may need to be initiated would include social media, things like that. Inclusive language for sensory issues and other challenges. And policies that don't reflect who we serve, sort of a general outdated concept. So I think, yeah, folks were definitely understanding what you needed. I just didn't call it out 1, 2, 3 specifically, but I think
That's my fault. I didn't call it out 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Excellent. All excellent ideas. And of course, you'll get this audio. So what I want you to do when you can, or however you figure out how to do it, discuss this with those on your team and have people come up with it and have somebody get to work on it. We can say this should be changed or we should do this, but we don't do it. Do one thing at a time. And
oh, sorry, Jen. We can make the chat available as well. So they should be able to get the chat as a text file so we can go through and look at all of that.
Excellent. But my point is, I want everyone to discuss this with the people who also work at their facility and decide who's going to do it. When's this going to get done? Because oftentimes we give lip service to things like this, but they don't get changed. They don't get started. They don't happen. And they really do need to. Excellent work. Great ideas. I'm looking forward to receiving this too, because you came up with a lot more than I had. So that's a great idea. All right, that's policies. Now we'll move to procedures. Any more, Chase, to share on policies, or are we ready to move on?
I did actually skip over one. I think I scrolled. There's TV stations in the fitness center to not have political channels on, which I see as one that didn't necessarily fit any of those other categories. And then something to be initiated would be handling payment over the phone, or possibly readdressed or even outdated how we handle payment over the phone, allowing for verbal consent to process forms, some more pragmatic issues like that. But,
okay, all right. So what I would like you to do when we're all through is review your notes, and when you get the handout, the recording, review everything, and really decide what's crucial to do right now. What prioritize? Which shall we do first? Which can we do pretty easily and get that done? Which is going to take a little more work? Who can do it? And very often, especially when you look at social media things or the website or something like that, you probably have some brilliant people on staff who can do some of these things that aren't happening yet. All right, let's go to procedures. And we're going to look at 4 aspects. And this time I will try to say, when you list it on chat, tell us which one you're focused on, although it'll probably be pretty clear. All right, remember what we're doing is setting a bearing in line with our customers, not our own. All right, procedures. Just a funny note. When I first did this program, it was for a group, and a man came up to me after the program and said, despite that picture that you had for procedures, I run a dental society, and I would like you to come speak to us. So even a dentist could see the humor in that. All right, procedures. As I said, we're going to look at 4 aspects: face-to-face, and that would usually be at your facility or during a program or something, on the telephone, via email, or through the website. So let me give you a couple examples, and then I'll let you again have at it. Face-to-face, have you got some people on staff who are like mama bears with their little cubs? You know, they just sound nasty. And they look nasty. Remember what I said? My mom said I was intimidating as a baby. So I've got to be real careful about that one. And the older you get, the lower your eyes get. So it becomes even more of a problem. How are people on the phone? Do you have any that are like this? Hi, can I help you? Yeah, we have that program. Let's see. Let me figure out how you're supposed to do that. We need to talk with the people who are going to be on the phone, talk about how they are phrasing things and how they sound. And I think this is a good reminder for everybody right now. So often what you're hearing, you have heard before, right? You've heard it and heard it and heard it. And yet for that customer, that person, that community member, it's their burning question. So we have to be, remember that word I asked you to write down at the very beginning. We have to be responsive. Yeah. All right, so how are they doing face-to-face? How are they doing on the phone? And then let's talk about email. Interesting research conducted by a benchmark portal. They had researchers posing as customers, and they contacted 287 companies. Only 39% of those companies responded within 24 hours. For many people, it's a 2-day period, but I don't know. I think 24 hours is good. And 3/4 of those responses weren't helpful. So when people send an email, we really got to stop and look at what question are they asking? And of course, the emails we're getting aren't all that well phrased very often too. So it is a dilemma. This is from William Gallagher, who's a communication expert, and he said 30% of emails are sent to clarify a previous email that we sent because it wasn't unclear, because it was incomplete for whatever reason. So if you would like to get your inbox a little less loaded, make sure that the emails you send are clear. Otherwise, you're getting emails back to clarify. So here are some tips to make them a little bit better. Use the subject line like a headline. The subject line is the most important thing in email. So you can include your point in that subject line. That's a possibility. You can highlight action and completion dates in your subject line. So please have this form back to us by whatever the date is. You can ask a question in your subject line. People are like curious cats, you know, you get a question, they're like, ooh, I got to find out what this is about. And you can emphasize, or you couldn't do all four, you can emphasize a benefit to them for doing something. Remember the example I gave of the primary guardian. So for your child's safety, we ask that you share the name of the primary guardian and emergency contact. So the subject line can be very important. Other thing that I notice a lot, I notice less now, but I used to notice it a lot, is that organizations don't have a uniform signature. And this is pretty much my signature. It's one of course, the wonderful thing about Outlook is you can have a number of different signatures and choose. I also have one that's just the Jan script. So I don't keep sending that whole thing all the time. But it's very important to decide what needs to be in that signature and get it normal looking. I almost had a group throw things at me when I said this at one company. Up here, the Seahawks are a big deal, as I'm sure you're aware. If you ever hear of Seattle, you hear of the Seahawks. And a bunch of people in their company had like the Seahawk logo in their signature or something in there. And I was adamant that they needed to come up with a uniform signature that included the website of the company, included the company phone number. And in many cases, we will have a tagline, which you see mine, helping professionals create positive responses. So take a look at that. Do you have a uniform signature, and is everybody using them? Another thing that you can check out is Pew Research Center has done a lot of research about the internet, and I don't think any of this will surprise anybody today. 87% of adults are using the internet. Well, I was going to say it's probably 100%, but no, there are some who still aren't. So 87% are using the internet. And what's interesting about this is they've broken it down to income and where they live, urban or suburban. Very interesting. But notice what people are really looking for. 91% are using a search engine to find information. So they've got to be able to find you with keywords. 84% are looking for information on a hobby or interest. Oh, that's you, isn't it? So make it easy for them to find. And I'm going to show you some examples in a moment of websites. 84% are searching for a map or driving directions. Do they know how to get to all the parks in your region? Let's look at some examples. This is from Mission Viejo. And I think it's an excellent, I did something. I took screenshots of one, and then I took a screenshot of another, and then I pushed them together and added a white bar. I got pretty creative, I thought. So this is not really their homepage, but their homepage is great. What I want you to notice is down the side, look how easy it is for them to find out, for the person using it, to find out anything that they might need. they can just move down the left. The other thing to think about is you have, more than most organizations, the potential for fabulous pictures. So make sure you've got them. Look at the one here. Make a splash in your fitness goals. Excellent. Here's another one. This is from the city of Folsom. Now it's set up completely different, but notice they've got easy links to find out anything that they want to know. And these pictures rotate on their actual website, so you see different pictures each time. Here's Roseville, close to my heart because that's where one of my relatives lives. I know it's close to Sacramento, Chase, so we're in your territory. Again, they've made it very easy to move to any particular aspect that you're looking for, and they've done it with actual pictures. Again, wonderful pictures. And then the last one, oh my gosh, is that a great picture? City of Sacramento. And again, because it's often your website is the city's website, they've got the different options up at the top. But then when you get to parks, look at, they've got all the options and you just click on it and you can find out what you need. So what I want you to decide now, and when you enter it in chat, because I didn't say this last time, just say face-to-face, telephone, email, or website, and then enter in what you've come up with. So which procedures do you have in place right now that your employees are being asked, or your staff or your volunteers are being asked to go through that may be getting in your customer's way? So I'm going to be quiet, give you a chance to make some notes, give you a chance to enter your ideas in chat. Just say face, and then what you come up with, telephone, what you come up with, email, what you come up with, website, what you come up with. All right, I'm going to be quiet.
We are getting some great responses. Like people are taking their time to think about it, and also supporting each other and saying, yeah, that's one of my issues too.
I hope this isn't awkward, but in my real live program with real people, you would be breaking up into small groups and discussing this with your team workers. But I think it's real important, your team workers, your teams. I think it's real important to take that time now and really make some notes and get it in chat so we can all see it.
Now is a good time to thank everybody for taking part in these digital sessions, and I know that it is an adjustment for a lot of people, both the learner and the presenter, so we're all glad that we can all be here and make the best of it. Should I start going through these?
Sure, let's start with face-to-face. Let me just give you two quick examples that are real-life examples. One is definitely recreation. I told Chase not long ago, I actually broke my arm bowling about 7 years ago. I had taken my nephew to a bowling alley and fouled, and boy, those alleys are slick. And I went straight up in the air, and when I fell down, of course, I broke my fall with my hand and broke my wrist. And if you could have seen my little nephew's eyes, they got huge. But I want to talk about when we went back to that bowling center. You know, they're not called alleys anymore. They're called bowling centers. And I went up to get the shoes for the guys. And the man behind the counter said, you know, I can put the bumper up for the boys and put it down for you. And I looked at him like, oh. And he said, you had a really good score last time, didn't you? Okay, he didn't know my name. He didn't have to know my name. He talked about something that actually happened that we engaged with. So Chase, what did our listeners come up with for face-to-face?
We've got a lot of folks saying that having people come in and signing something continuously. So we've got signing a waiver every month for continuous activities, and then requiring wet signatures for registrations, payments, and transactions. So I think that would be sort of could we move this from face-to-face to website? No automated billing, so people have to come in for a continuing youth program. Then we've got face-to-face, the glass window barrier with a little hole to talk through. We need to advance and get speaker capability.
Yeah, well, they're back in vogue right now, but yes, those are definitely something to be eliminated. Absolutely. This is not a 1950s movie theater kiosk.
Yeah. And then we've got seconds and thirds to wet signatures, having customers fill out a new form with initials, re-agreeing to policies every time they renew a membership. Way too many layers to get through for registrations. We've got that health membership cancellations need to be in writing. Some members will call or email 3 or more months later saying they canceled in writing and want a full refund, even though we have nothing in writing from them. So that's sort of all three at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so I think the majority of folks have website issues from what I can see, but that should be face-to-face.
What are some of the issues?
So we've got no automated billing. That's another one. Inability to accept credit card payments. An out-of-date website where customers can't view their current or past enrolled classes. Registration and permitting process for park use. You have to click through 2 to 3 pages before you find our permit information. Same goes for special events department, aquatics, activity registrations, all of it. Website, too many steps to programs, too much text, landscapes instead of showing participants in programs or parks.
Yeah.
Registration procedures are a big issue generally. Dated website and advertising videos. Way too many layers to get through, very complicated, several steps to get to what you need. Seems to be a very common theme.
Yeah, there are a lot of really clunky, to use a real technical term, websites out there. Mine I have updated recently, not to anything new and modern, because I've seen a lot of my colleagues in the National Speakers Association update their websites to the point where it's like, what? One of the things I was adamant about when my designer created my website was I want no dead ends. I want people to be able to get where they need to get and find what they need to find. And hopefully you'll go to my website and download the article. Well, actually, don't. That's a generic getting in your customer's way. Chase has the link to an article that I wrote that is specific for Park and Rec that you might want to share with some people. All right, did anybody talk about email, Chase, in their chat?
Mostly just the combination with registration and people who need to call or email through multiple layers. And then we had one that was, again, not tagged as anything specific, but only certain staff can run a credit card. If they're gone, we can't run a credit card.
Wow.
Yeah, and our administration is similar. We only have a limited number of people who can do payments, and with this current digital crisis, doing that from home has its own security issues. So that's a tech gap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me take this a step further then. One of the things that I need to say loud and clear, and I'm sure some of you will cheer, the customer is not always right. You hear that phrase a lot, the customer's always right. No, the customer is not always right. But the important thing to remember is don't make them wrong. And think about how often we've heard somebody might say something and then we say, wow, that's the first time I've heard that. Yeah, well, you just made them wrong. You just made them stupid. So we've got to be really careful about that. And on the telephone, I've always loved, Tom Peters has a quote. He says, push 1, push 2, push 3, push your customer over the edge. I just went through this. As Chase knows, I took a really bad fall here since I've been sheltering at home doing stupid things. And I did finally walk to, I had a telehealth visit with my doctor. I mean, this is a brave new world out here. And she looked at it and she asked me to do certain things with my wrist, all of which I could do. But she said, you should probably still get an x-ray. And the place was close enough for me to walk to. So I bundled up and walked. And yes, it's not broken. But boy, I had to go through that clinic's do this, do that, enter this, enter that. I had to do it twice. In the process of trying, one was to set up the telehealth visit, and then the other was to set up the appointment with the x-ray. And it made me crazy. So think about your customers. It's making them crazy if they have to push 1, push 2, push 3. 1 for yes, 2 for no. I was practically screaming at the phone before I was through. So thank you for those great ideas because they are important. All right, so really the key here is whoever the staff is, whoever the volunteers are, whoever is in charge has got to be sure that they're doing things the way you want them done. And if they're not, they don't need to be punished, they need to be educated, they need to be trained. So again, get the handouts from Don't Just Talk, Communicate, and you will see the difference in people. So what we've got to do, remember the mantra for this program, set a bearing in line with your customers. You've got to realign that compass. It's got to be focused on what they need, not just what you need. All right, let's move to the last P, the people. Yeah, we're all different, aren't we? Especially some are extremely different. So I want you to think, and this is kind of nice to do, and when we're live, people are a little reticent to focus on this one. I don't want to hear any names of people who are doing things wrong, but I want you to really think about how's your staff handling this. I did this program for Florida Recreation and Park Association. I'll be doing it again this year, or 21. And I got an email from the director of one of the sites in Florida. And she said, what do we do with volunteers? I just got the 3rd complaint about one volunteer. And bells went off in my head. I don't know about you, but I sent her a lot of information about giving feedback. But the other issue is placement. Are they being placed in an area, volunteer and staff, where they can thrive, where they can use their talents? If a person is a bear face-to-face, then don't have them greeting people as they come in. Just, it's as simple as that. Put them in the back in front of a computer screen and let them do what they do well. So think about that. Now, some interesting quotes. This is from Daniel Goleman, and this is why I encourage you to download the article. It's on the second page of your handouts. Now, just for what makes a leader. People are promoted for technical, operational, and intellectual reasons. And I'm sure some of you are thinking of yourselves. Some of you are thinking about managers that you know, but fail for emotional ones. Remember, service is about feelings. Yeah. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Tom Peters had a colleague, Robert Waterman. He was the co-author of In Search of Excellence. And look what he said. He said, people need directed autonomy. Almost sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Directed autonomy. And when you look at the communication styles, you will really see that. They need both specific direction, and a lot of people are failing because they don't have specific direction, and the freedom to make choices that help accomplish the goal. One of my best examples of this, do any of you have pets that are on special diets? Yeah. Jude, my cat, who was 15 years old when he finally failed and I had to have him put to sleep. Yep. But he was on a special diet because of his urinary tract blockage problem. Okay, I know, too much information. So I went to the vet where I usually bought his food, and I asked for a case. And the guy said, you know, we don't carry that anymore. And I was like, oh, fine. And he gave me some reasons, which I didn't even care about. He said, you know, their delivery hasn't been good and their prices have gone up. And I'm like, I don't care. This is the food he has to have. And then he said the magic words. And I want you to think about this. How can you instill or empower staff and volunteers in this way? He said to me, you know, we're carrying a brand that we really like right now. It's very similar to the Royal Canin that your cat's used to. And it comes in 3 flavors. May I give you a can of each flavor? And you take it home and see if he likes it. Whoa. Yeah, you can do that. Took it home. He turned out he liked them all, but he had one that he really, really liked. So I went back 2 days later and bought a whole case of that. That's how you make people happy. So rather than creating a hoop that they have to jump through, are you making it easier for them? So that's directed autonomy, specific directions, and then the freedom to make choices that help accomplish the goal. When you look at communication styles, you will see that there is one style that isn't comfortable unless they know the rules. And I call those the blues. So if you look at this mock-up, you see what are the 4 styles and what you would see in the handout and the slides for them. Don't just talk, communicate. And what's interesting to think about, and this is why we need directed autonomy. If you look at the top, and this is how we got the quadrants, the top 2 are what we call very task-focused styles. I call them the greens and the reds. The greens want a lot of detail. The reds just want to get it done and get it done now. But they're both very task-focused. Sometimes to get their attention, you have to say their name 2 or 3 times. You know who they are. And then at the bottom, you see 2 more styles, and this is where the blues come in, the blues and the yellows. These are very people-focused styles. And the blues, more than anyone else, have to know what the rules are. And if they don't, they're very uncomfortable. Reds don't have rules. Greens have lots of rules. Yellows are kind of like, yeah, that's okay. Let's just do that. So thinking about what style your staff members and your volunteers are is very important when you think about where they fit in. Now look over on the left. It says indirect. Greens and blues are indirect communicators. They're very sequential, very logical. And interestingly, and you might make a note of this, I haven't seen it broken down between the two. Very often people are green-blue combination. They make up 70% of our population. Now that's very important for me to understand, especially because I'm over on the other side. I'm a red-yellow, as in orange. We are very direct communicators and we're random instinct thinkers. So if a green, whose favorite question is why, because it's a logic question, if a green says to me, a red or a yellow, why did you do that? My answer would be, because it felt right. Instinct. Now that's very hard for a green to accept, very hard for them to hear it from a yellow or red. We're all different. And that's one of the important reasons or things to understand as a manager, as a leader, as someone dealing with the public or with council members or mayors or people in city government. All of that, very important to think about and adjust our style so that we can be heard by them. So how could the skills, the people skills of your staff and leaders be improved? So you have the opportunity to be very anonymous here. So make some notes for yourself. If you're thinking about a particular person, you probably are. Great, just don't use their name. We're not going to diss anybody here. So how could the people skills of your staff and leaders be improved? I'll be quiet and let you make some notes and enter your ideas in chat so we can see what you came up with.
Getting some great responses. And just as a time check, we have about 20 minutes left in our, what I guess I would call our promised education. We say we have a 90-minute session, and then anything, Jan, if you want to stick around for Q&A, that would be great. But
well, I think we should also have some Q&A that is included in that time frame.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Just didn't know where you were at in the presentation. I know I always like a time check because I tend to go faster than I think, then I run out of slides, and then the next time I go too slow to overcompensate.
Yeah, I went through this a little faster on Zoom, so
That's what I figured.
I've given you some ideas. I'll give you one here that is very interesting, both on the telephone and face-to-face. What do you suppose is the four-letter word that we hear as a criticism most often? People say they were rude. And what we've got to think about, if we're going to give someone feedback, a real life person feedback, is not to say you can't be rude to people, because obviously they don't know what they did that was perceived as rude. So it could be their tone of voice, could be their facial expression, could be that they hurried the person along. If we're going to give someone feedback, we have to be real clear specifically about what it is that they did. So that's very crucial in this whole people aspect. So what have these brilliant people come up with, Chase, for people skills?
Yeah, and since these are all, I can go right down the list. And the first one is actually by not being abrupt, as you were just saying. By listening more, not always spending their time working on a response. So active listening. More patient and kind with one another and clients, putting themselves in the customer's shoes. Being more inclusive and role modeling. Follow through. Listening, customer just wants to be heard sometimes. Increased patience and listening, generally interpersonal skill improvements are helpful. By using active listening skills, most folks just want to be heard. Could be improved, talking robotic with a script. I assume we don't want to do that. To change the perspective of your staff's view so they don't see customers as obligations. And we've got, as a department that hires many young people, often for their first job, I think our role as leaders is to help them learn to bridge the gap between different generations. Show them that they can't speak to customers, parents, program participants in the same way they speak to their friends and peers. Remaining knowledgeable and involved. Don't forget what your subordinates go through. Not rushing through the directions, waiting for a response from the customer and clarifying. Talking, but constantly looking at your device. Stop taking customer comments so personally and become less defensive. Focus on the customer concerns by listening better. And then we had people call the four-letter word rude. They guessed it for sure. More say they need to work on follow-through. Meet with staff individually who need improvement and show them how they look on camera when they're working with customers. You know, if they're slouching, eating at the front desk on their cell phone, it often surprises them to see how they're presenting themselves. Being open and communicating to improve, be empathetic, and treat others with dignity. It's a nice button on that list there.
Yeah, wow. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we did that all every day? Yeah.
So
a lot
followed
about,
up with golden rule.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot about listening. And one of the keys that we run into, listening to listen, not respond. Stephen Covey has a great quote about that. Most people listen with the intent to reply, not the intent to understand. So unfortunately, that's often true of a lot of us. And I call it listening in the yeah, but mode. You know, all I want to do is respond. I'm not listening to you. So part of that, there are some times, because I'm a talker, when I actually will listen, holding my mouth shut. And eye contact is very important. So of course, looking at your device takes that away and takes your interest away, and we can't multitask no matter what we think. And I really liked hearing that one, give them feedback in private. That's crucial, that it not be done in front of other people. As far as videoing them, that's a great idea. I would talk to legal a little bit about that and make sure that it's okay to do. I'm not sure that we can video someone without their knowing it and then play it back. So maybe one just to them we can, but you know, this, you know where I'm coming from. It's this whole crisis of being posted on social media. And I followed a woman who was doing a program in Long Beach who was talking about suicide. And I was glad that I didn't step into the program before I did mine, because I probably would have been crying by the time I came out of that. What we're doing to people with our disrespect, and especially with social media, you got to be careful. So good that you came up with all of that. Again, remember to share this with other people at your facility. Get the team to decide. What I'd like you to do right now is decide which one thing that you came up with. There's a lot of you came up with a lot. Circle it, put a star by it. What's the one thing that needs to happen immediately? So everybody star that thing. What is it that needs to happen immediately? And then hand in hand with that, I mentioned this earlier, what could happen fairly quickly and who could do it? Some of you are thinking, oh, I'm overwhelmed already. I can't do all of this. Well, of course you can't. So who can do some aspect of it? One of the things that, as I'm planning for this program I'm going to be doing for Florida called Maximizing Your Volunteer Workforce, I've been talking to some of my colleagues, and one who deals a lot with volunteers. In fact, she has done a lot of training for CPRS. Her name is Becky Lunders. So many of you probably know her, and I know her very well for another reason. Becky said, find your volunteer leaders. Find the people who can lead a segment of your volunteers. You don't have to take all this on yourself. And if they're natural leaders, it gives them, that's empowering, and it gives them a sense of accomplishment, and they're probably good at it. So look at those people within your staff and within your volunteers who are natural leaders, who can be delegated to, who can lead successfully. So have you decided what one thing you're going to focus on? Let's hear those in chat. Let's hear those in chat. That doesn't even sound like it makes sense. What one thing do you need to do immediately? Let's have you share that through chat, and then Chase, will you share what they come up with? Are you getting input, Chase?
Yep, a few folks are trickling in. I think they were making their personal notes first, and now they've got to type it all out. But yeah, some good responses.
And they've got to review their notes and then decide, because we covered a lot. And one of the problems with making any changes is trying to do too much at once, trying to do too many, and getting overwhelmed, and then nothing happens. So and again, this may be something that you'll discuss with your colleagues. It won't be your decision, but it is good to have some input. And we just went through this program together, so I think you're going to have lots of input. One of the things I want to say while you're all looking through your notes is, if the customer is not always right, and we need to just make sure we don't make them wrong, another truism is there is no such thing as common sense. There is no such thing. So when I will hear people say, well, it's just common sense to be nice to people face to face. Well, yeah, wouldn't that be great? But it's not common sense. Or it's just common sense to make sure that everybody can take a credit card. That's common sense. No. So really think about that. Okay, I'm going to shut up. What did we come up with, or what are they going to focus on now, Chase?
All right. I think the one immediate concept we can all ascribe to is Anthony Shriver's reminder: treat others the way you'd like to be treated. That was Anthony in the chat, said the golden rule there. Very important. Clear expectations, red flags. We've got our departments facing employee evaluation during this COVID closure, and I think an immediate thing we can do is give private feedback to our employees right away.
Yes.
We've got use the, quote, customer lens as policy is created to try and understand how we would feel being on the other side of the counter or phone or computer. Go back and revisit existing policies.
That's very important, and just another way to say it is we've all been customers. All of us have been customers. So what went on that made us uncomfortable? And that's why when I say the word policies, I see people do that. And the minute they come out with that, I always say, unless you sell insurance, don't even use the word policy. Okay, what else do you have, Chase? Those are good.
Well, the next one is to change outdated policies. But on top of that, to include several different personnel to be involved in the writing, not just management.
Yes.
We've got an agree to act as the customer, see what works and what doesn't. Platinum rule, treat others the way they want to be treated.
Yes.
Then someone says, we get program evaluations per quarter. These evaluations have been used for program development and refinement. We should be sharing these with all the individuals who are part of the process to get a patron enrolled in a class to those who teach the class.
Yes.
Not just to the program coordinator or supervisor. Share the feedback across the board.
Yes.
Also, input from the front desk is key. Front desk is really in the thick on customer service. Front desk admin will have the best suggestions on improvements.
Yes.
Let's see. Manage the way that you speak and the words you use with customers closely.
And staff, customers and staff. Because however your employees feel is how your customers are going to feel sooner or later. I think that statement from Albrecht is one to really keep in your mind. Wow. Yeah. And that's really the point of Goodman's article. How are we treating customers? Employees. Are we just worried about the customers, or how are we treating employees? Because they will come back to bite you. Excellent. You have more? These are wonderful, Chase. Do you have more?
I think that is it for now.
Okay.
Anybody's still typing one out or has something they would like to add? We'd love to hear it.
And are we going to do the Q&A through chat, or are they going to unmute themselves?
Well, that's up to you and how many folks have stuff they'd like to talk about. We can always have folks unmute themselves if they're comfortable doing so, or put their questions in the chat.
Okay, I'll just run through my 4 final slides, and then we're just about at our 90 minutes. I can take a couple questions, and then those who need to or want to may leave. So remember, there are 2 articles to download. They're at the bottom of the second page. One is treating employees as customers, and that's the John Goodman article. That is not the actor. This is somebody else. I'm sure he's gotten teased a lot for having that name. It's free to download. And then the other is What Makes a Leader by Daniel Goleman. It's available at Harvard Business Review, and it is $8.95, and it's an excellent article. So remember, what we've been thinking about is aligning your compass. Think about the policies you have in place. Are there some that need to be eliminated, rephrased, or initiated? What about the procedures that you've created? Are there unnecessary hoops for your customers to jump through? And boy, you came up with a lot of those. And it sounded like a lot of them were on the website, but some of them were also face-to-face. They had to do with signatures and that sort of thing. And then the people skills of those who work with customers and lead them. It's imperative that we give people feedback that's not hurtful, that's specific, and that really thinks about their goals. That's one way I always talk about feedback, is say, I know that it's important to you to make sure that people are signed up for the right class, and they want to be signed up for the right class. So that's all very important. What a lot of them also want is a joyful, pleasant interaction while that's being done, because they're coming to a park and they're thinking in terms of recreation. And it just can't be boom, 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 boom. Yeah, so we need to set a bearing in line with our customers. Somebody called it the platinum rule, and that is treat them, talk to them the way that they hear things. And that is the Don't Just Talk, Communicate program. So if we set a bearing in line with our customers, they're going to be more willing to open their wallets, to sign up for your programs, to sign their kids up, to support your parks. Thank you for participating, all of you. I've got 1 minute till it's 90 minutes. So any questions coming through the chat, Chase? If I have to say chat, Chase, one more time.
No, we'll get mixed up. Nothing that came through since we were talking the last time, but folks, thanking you for a great session, and I will join them in that. I'm not encouraging anyone to leave, but I am posting the link in the chat now, which is our evaluation survey, and that will let us know how you felt about the session and have an area for chat, and then that's also where you will mark if you need CEUs.